Welcome back to Live Now from Fox, and we have some breaking news as President Joe Biden has just announced that he is dropping out of the 2024 presidential race. This happening just moments ago. You are taking a look at the letter that he has just issued, and we are going to read it in its entirety. It says, "My fellow Americans, over the past 3.5 years, we have made great progress as a nation. Today, America has the strongest economy in the world. We've made historic investments in rebuilding our nation, in lowering prescription drug costs for seniors, and in expanding affordable health care to a record number of Americans. We've provided critically needed care to 1 million veterans exposed to toxic substances, passed the first gun safety law in 30 years, appointed the first African-American woman to the Supreme Court, and passed the most significant climate legislation in the history of the world. America has never been better positioned to lead than we are today." It goes on to say, quote, "I know none of this could have been done without you, the American people. Together, we overcame a once-in-a-century pandemic and the worst economic crisis since the Great Depression. We've protected and preserved our democracy, and we've revitalized and strengthened our alliances around the world. It has been the greatest honor of my life to serve as your president. And while it had been my intention to seek re-election, I believe it is in the best interest of my party and the country for me to stand down and to focus solely on fulfilling my duties as president for the remainder of my term. I will speak to the nation later this week in more detail about my decision. For now, let me express my deepest gratitude to all those who have worked so hard to see me reelected. I want to thank Vice President Kamala Harris for being an extraordinary partner in all this work. And let me express my heartfelt appreciation to the American people for the faith and trust you have placed in me. I believe today what I have always, that there is nothing America can't do when we do it together. We just have to remember we are the United States of America." The letter signed Joe Biden. And we continue to follow this breaking news as we have just learned that President Biden has dropped out of the 2024 presidential race. And we were going to be getting to an expert, Keith Nahagian, who is joining us now. And I do want to, as this is raw and unedited, I'm going to make sure that he can hear me. And so we're going to bring that up right now just to make sure that he can hear me. Keith, can you hear me? Okay, so we're gonna bring Keith in. We're gonna bring Keith in right now, and again, bear with us because this is breaking news right here. Keith, you're here live on Live Now from Fox. I just want to make sure. Can you hear me? Okay, unfortunately, for whatever reason, we cannot hear you. And I know that this is on the fly right here. So what we're gonna do is, we cannot hear you right now, so why don't we're going to step away for just a little bit. We're going to work on your audio to see if you can eventually get your audio back up. So we're going to just pivot slightly. But again, we are following breaking news as President Biden has announced that he is dropping out of the 2024 presidential race. This, of course, was the big question for several weeks now as more Democratic lawmakers have been calling for him to exit the presidential race after he had a very weak performance following the first debate with former President Trump in Atlanta, Georgia. That sparked concerns that he was not fit to run. He said that he was. He refuted any calls for him to step down, saying that he would not do so. However, after weeks of speculation, this just in, he has announced that he is stepping down. And I want to once again bring up this letter that he has just issued right here. And again, this is a letter that he has just sent out saying that even though he has made great progress as a nation and that it has been the greatest honor of his life to serve as president, he believes that it is in the best interest of the Democratic Party and the country for him to step down. So we are going to continue to follow this breaking news. Again, we are going to be speaking with Keith Nahigian, who was actually at the Republican National Convention earlier this week to discuss this breaking news right here. But this comes after President Biden has repeatedly indicated that he would not drop out of the presidential campaign after his very weak performance at the first presidential debate with former President Trump. And so we continue to follow this breaking news as dozens of Democratic lawmakers have said that he should be dropping out. In fact, several days ago, nearly 2/3 of Democrats said President Biden should withdraw from the presidential race and let his party nominate a different candidate. That is according to a poll by the AP, the Associated Press, as he continued to try and salvage his candidacy. President Biden has been combating COVID-19, and he was at his home in Delaware as he continues to recover. But this comes after weeks of speculation after he would be able to salvage his candidacy after his very weak performance in that debate. The survey by the Associated Press found that only about 3 in 10 Democrats are extremely or very confident that he has the mental capacity to serve effectively as president. And that really underscored there was a big question about his age. President Biden is 81 years old. He had a few missteps, a few verbal miscues during his debate and prior to that as he was addressing NATO. And so there were concerns that another 4 years he would not be capable of really running the country. And so we continue to follow this breaking news, and we're going to bring in a number of experts right here. But we did want to share that with you as President Biden, 81 years old, now deciding to step down from the presidential race here in 2024. He, of course, was going to be going up against former President Trump, former Trump accepting and officially being nominated from the Republican Party earlier this week at the RNC. The Democratic National Convention, that is scheduled for August. And there was a lot of speculation as to whether he would drop out prior to that. And if so, the next question, of course, is, who is going to be the nominee? Is it going to be Vice President Kamala Harris? There has been hundreds of millions of dollars raised by the Democratic Party, by the Biden-Harris campaign. All of that money has to go to that particular duo. And so the question is whether Vice President Kamala Harris will now be the nominee for the party, or could it be someone else? We've been hearing from the California Governor Gavin Newsom, who repeatedly said that he would not run against Vice President Kamala Harris. He has been thought of as another potential candidate for the Democratic Party. So the question now is, what is going to happen? In this letter that you're taking a live look at, it does say that President Biden will address the nation later on this week with more detail about his decision. But at this point in time, this is all that we're getting right now as he does continue to recover from symptoms of the coronavirus. And so former President Biden now continuing to be the president, but announcing that he will drop out of the presidential race. And so we are going to continue to follow this breaking news, as we are going to bring in a number of experts right here. And we did have Keith Nahigian on the line. We were having some issues with his audio. We're going to try and get him up again. So we're going to try that as you bear with us, as we do continue to follow some breaking news. So we're going to see if we can get him on the line right now. Keith, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you fine.
Okay, so now we have you. The audio has been fixed. So again, we were going to be speaking with you about a completely different political story. You hopped on, and just seconds ago, President Biden issuing the letter indicating that he is going to be dropping out of the presidential race. Does this surprise you?
In politics, nothing surprises me. That's why it's interesting for everybody to follow along. It is big news. Obviously, they were in a bind They've been losing a lot of trust and credibility in the last month since the debate. And there's been the drip drip of what to do next. They were trying to get him nominated before the convention, and that was set for a meeting for this coming Friday. But it looks like all the pressure and the money has just stopped, and he made a big decision. Now, the question is, who is next, as you were mentioning in your earlier lead-in, and the problem is the vice president is hooked to all of the things that have lost the trust of the American public over the last several years, whether it's Afghanistan, Bidenomics is working, there's no inflation, things are great in Ukraine, Israel, and now being a co-conspirator on this, is the president competent to hold office? She has been out there saying he's the sharpest guy in the room, and now she's in a negative position. So she doesn't have anything besides being able to keep the money that's already been raised. She really doesn't have any advantages going into the general election.
So who would be next then, if Vice President Kamala Harris isn't the next nominee? Who is next? What names have you heard, if any?
Well, it's an open convention. So let me just step back and say, since the debate, you have earned media and paid media. Earned media is the media coverage that is done. And the entire month of July has been this divide. You're looking at the entire month of August to be who is the nominee going to be. If she doesn't pull the first ballot, then the superdelegates can come in. And that's the case, that you have an open convention and you have a lot of names like Bashir, you have the Pennsylvania governor, but they have virtually no name ID nationwide. So you're going to be picking a team of people, or at least a vice president, that people don't know who they are. And that's going to be an entire lost month of August of driving the message of what makes them different from the team of Trump and Vance going forward. So these are dramatic developments, and these are just huge things. It also sends a signal around the world of consistency that will make the Wall Street on Monday really go up and down quite a bit. Inconsistency is not good for the system.
And Keith, I want to ask you this, because there was a new Associated Press poll that said that only 3 out of 10 Democrats were extremely or very confident in President Biden's mental capacity. But I have to imagine, and he's repeatedly said that he's staying in this race, now only to drop out just days after former President Trump was officially nominated by the Republican Party. Does this not throw the Democratic Party into chaos?
It's complete chaos. An open convention is complete chaos. Their rules are, on the second ballot, anybody can vote for anybody, and all of the superdelegates can then come in. They have kind of a barren system here that big elected officials can swoop in. Are they going to pick someone? Is there someone that's kind of a long shot? Who's got the name ID? Bernie Sanders has name ID. Hillary Clinton has name ID. Others don't. Even someone like Gavin Newsom. He might be known in the political circle, but he's not known to rank and file in these targeted states, is where it really matters. And it's a big problem going forward. How do they raise the money? How do they set up the legal structure? What do the Biden people, where do they go? Where's their allegiance? These are all huge questions, and it's going to really eat into that earned media time, as I mentioned, from now until the first votes are cast. Just 2 months from now, early voting starts in 6 states, and they are not going to be able to get a ballot or get a field set and then drive the message of what they want to drive forward. It's a big, big problem on their side.
And President Biden has said repeatedly that he would not step down, saying that he is the only person, this is according to him, he's the only person that can actually achieve victory over former President Trump. Now that he steps down, what does that indicate? And again, he's still the president. He's still president of the United States. So what does that mean for the rest of his term?
Well, the question is, if he's not competent to run, is he competent to be president now? And that's going to be the question on Monday morning here. Who is running the government? You know, we've been told the border is secure. We've been told everything's great in Ukraine, everything's great in Israel. None of those are true. And now you're going to have Secret Service hearings starting on Monday, which falls under Homeland Security and Mayorkas. It's going to be who's running these things and how going forward are key decisions made. I think he's not dropping out because he doesn't want to make his vice president the acting president, which is a real snub to her. But the questions are not going to stop at this point.
So what is the next step? Again, as you said, this is politics. Nothing surprises you. And time again, specifically in this presidential election cycle, there have been surprise after surprise. This may not be a shock for many, as there have been dozens of Democratic lawmakers calling for President Biden to exit the race. Still a major surprise. And as you mentioned, I feel like there are a lot of question marks. What happens next? We've never really gone through something like this.
We're about to go through something that we never went through with the early roll call vote based on nothing. They were trying to do an early roll call vote to avoid chaos in Chicago. Now, without that, I don't think they're going to do a roll call vote with Harris and nobody on the vice president's side. So they aren't going to be able to do a roll call vote. So they're going to have to be a roll call vote at the convention a month from now, in which Kamala Harris has to pick a vice president and then try to win on the first ballot. At the second ballot, it's wide open to anybody's name, anybody doing anything. Complete and utter chaos moving forward on their side. And going back to the messaging again, since the debate, they have not been able to message why they were running for office and contrasting the Trump-Vance team. The entire month of July was wasted on whether or not Biden was going to drop out. And now the entire month of August is going to be who's going to be the nominee. And then that just leaves a couple of weeks in September before early voting. That's not enough time to raise money, get your messaging straight, and roll forward. It's unlike anything anybody's ever seen. It's a big win for, I think, the Trump-Vance team that just went through a convention of complete unity, drawing the contrast, laying out strength, unity, making people wealthier, making them stronger. Those messages burned in, and now they're rolling for the next 2 months until early voting, and the other side's in complete chaos.
So I popped up a live look at the White House there, Keith. And again, it looks very peaceful from the outside. I have to imagine the conversations being had at this moment in time with all of the leaders and the lawmakers. It is just beyond what we could possibly imagine, all of those conversations being had right now.
Well, you and I talked for several interviews that it's up to Biden to drop out. I didn't think he was going to do it. I thought he was going to hang on another 7 days and then lock his 3,800. It's also really hard to run as democracy is on the ballot when you just disenfranchise 14 million people that voted in the primary system. This has been one of the biggest cover-ups in political history of hiding the ball of this person's competency. They should have primaried him. They should have tested him. He should have gone through things before they got the debate. And what they ended up with was kind of what they sowed, the results of not being honest and losing the truthfulness of the entire campaign. Remember, a week before that debate, they were talking about fake videos, made up videos. This isn't the case. He's the sharpest guy. And then everybody keeps seeing everything with their own eyes. And I think that's where they're losing their credibility, whether the lawfare technique, the border is secure, there's no such thing as inflation. And now coming up this week, we are doing everything to protect our opponent. That's going to be a big problem when the head of the Secret Service goes to Capitol Hill. It's going to be more problems. And, you know, they all work for Kamala Harris, too. So she's going to have to take responsibility for all this. So she's not out of the woods. I think when you look at the White House, is it peaceful? There's probably a lot of fighting in there right now of who is running the country and who gets to choose who's on the top of this ticket. These are all questions that they just can't answer right now. And it's another month of complete chaos coming on the heels of complete unity and message discipline on the Republican side in Milwaukee.
And Keith, let's talk about the timing and the manner of all of this. This happening just about 2 o'clock Eastern time on a Sunday. President Biden issuing a letter on, a White House letterhead. What do you make of the time and the method? A letter on an early Sunday afternoon.
think it's weird. This is the kind of thing you should go to the nation and address the nation. This isn't something you just text out, tweet out, or write in a letter. I think it's very odd on a Sunday. He's going into a big week of Netanyahu being in town here and a lot of other things going on. Something this big, you should really address the nation. He addressed the nation after former President Trump was shot. He probably should have addressed the nation on this, something like addressing tonight. The questions are, why isn't he stepping down so his vice president to take over? That's going to be one of the biggest weaknesses, because if he's not strong enough to run, is he strong enough to lead right now? And those questions are unanswered, and they're going to dog him going forward to the point that there may be another shoe to drop in this story.
And when you say another shoe to drop, what do you think will happen? What is that other shoe?
I think he will step down as president. I don't think you can have any credibility on running the country and just be a kind of a lame duck going forward. There's another national security reasons. There's the financial institutions around the world are based on a strong American leadership. It just projects a lot of weakness going forward. And without her being a presumptive nominee, it just raises a lot of those questions. And I think the pressure will build for him to actually turn over power to her. And if he's not, he's doing it in spite of, he must not have trust in her abilities. That's the reason he wants to hang on. If that's the case, then who is going to be their nominee? This is not something he should be doing 3 to 4 weeks before your convention, wondering like a game show, who's going to come out of the audience and be a contestant. That's not how it works. People have to be vetted. They have to have a team. They have to have a platform. They need to run, be familiar with the country, be aware of how the process runs. Just pulling someone out of the audience and telling them they're the nominee or vice president is a road to disaster.
And let's talk about, he did say in his letter that he is set to address the nation later on this week. And you mentioned right now, he is a lame duck president. He's announced that he's not going to run for re-election anymore. The election itself is in November. He hasn't mentioned anything about who might succeed him. He did say, I want to thank Vice President Kamala Harris for being an extraordinary partner in all this work, but stopped short of saying that he would then name her in the interim. Is that something that we might expect in this nationwide address? That is the number one question I think that everyone has now that he's officially announced he's stepping down. Who's next?
Well, she is a co-conspirator on this biggest cover-up going on, saying that he was competent, and now he's dropping out, admitting that he's not competent to hold office. So what is it, and what did she know, and why did she go along with all these things? So she has to run on his entire platform going forward. If she's going forward, there's no time to change that. She has to defend all those areas of untruthfulness that they have laid out, whether it's leaving Afghanistan, there's no inflation, all these things across the board. She's going to have to take responsibility for that. So going forward, these are just dramatic differences. And it's really an uncomfortable moment, because that's why you pick competent vice presidents. Does he not have trust in her? And if that's the case, she shouldn't be vice president either. So you have on one side, is he staying in office? And why isn't he passing it to her? It's because he doesn't have confidence in her being president of the United States, which is a dramatic failure on his leadership going forward. And it's going to have their convention be wide open. There is no consensus on Biden. There wasn't consensus on Kamala, and there's not going to be consensus on whoever it is they pick in their convention 4 weeks from now going forward. That's a messaging disaster.
And Keith, I have to ask, because the United States, of course, the most powerful country in the world, there is a lot of instability internationally. We do know that Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is going to be traveling to Washington, D.C. this coming week to address Congress. Ukraine is continuing its fight against Russia. How does the world perceive this news?
Terribly. I don't think the news, as I mentioned, the shoes are all dropped on the floor going forward. It was a unconventional leaving of office, or leaving of the campaign, which leaves open so many different questions of who is going next. The world markets are dependent on consistency and knowing what's coming. It's okay to have a general election, that's one thing, but not knowing who the candidates are and not knowing, most importantly, who is running the country. Is it the President of the United States? Is it the Vice President of the United States? Is it the First Lady? Who is making these decisions across the board? Who made decisions not to protect their opponents, RFK and Trump, from possible assassins? Who's making decisions on the border? Who's making the decisions on the economy? And who's making decisions internationally on things like Israeli protecting of our troops from attack in Yemen? These are all big things. And having that inconsistency of who is in charge and who is not in charge is just not good for the markets. It's not good for politics. It's not good for the election and for the whole process going forward.
Keith, again, this is breaking news. We are processing this as it happens in real time. A lot of conversations happening that we don't know about, but everyone likely scrambling with the big questions as to what happens next. In terms of next steps, or in terms of what you particularly are going to be on the lookout for. And I also have to wonder, you were at the Republican National Convention. You were mentioning that there was a lot of unity. There was, a singular message when it came to how the country needs to move forward and how it needs to unify. And I do have to imagine that former President Trump is taking this all in. We are expecting him to hold another rally in Charlotte, North Carolina this coming week. I have to imagine that he will likely be commenting on this latest development. It will be very interesting to see how he reacts.
It was a very successful campaign, from the messaging of rolling out your vice president, getting everybody unified, telling the story of a assassination attempt, but then laying out the key messages on the campaign, the terrible withdrawal from Afghanistan, recounting that, talking about what's economically hurting the country and how to fix that, strength of America abroad, how to fix that, and finally, how to make people safer. They drove those messages very well. Anne Hathaway, who ran the convention, Susie Wiles, who runs the campaign, very disciplined, very organized going forward. And where do we go from here is the other side. They may be picking personalities, but they're not going to be able to get their messaging straight of why they're running going forward. And I think it's probably the biggest problem with the Republican side is overconfidence. Something like this can cause you to spike the ball on the 10-yard line and think you have it won. You just never know in politics, as we saw from the news today. They need to keep focused and drive the contrast of why they're running and what the difference is from their opponent. If they take their eye off the ball and lay up, they'll be at their own peril too. So they need to stay focused going forward. But again, on the other side, complete and utter chaos. This has never happened. When Johnson dropped out in 1968, he just dropped out way before the primary. This wasn't happening right before the convention with 3,800 delegates already chosen and convention planning happening. President Biden has spent tens and tens of millions of dollars on paid media going forward. And looking back on it, that interview with Howard Stern that he did, I think in May, in which he said, "I'll debate anywhere, anytime," trying to move the debate up before the convention. It was a political suicide that he did on himself, that he should never have been in that position. He should have been in a position of power of incumbency, and I'm not debating my opponent till after the convention. He's the one that made these decisions. He's the one that performed bad, and now he's the one today that is dropping out of the race as a result of poor management of a campaign.
Keith, we do have some more breaking news right here, and I wanted to let you and our viewers know that President Biden has now issued another statement indicating that, quote, "Today, I want to offer my full support and endorsement for Kamala to be the nominee of our party this year. Democrats, it's time to come together and beat Trump. Let's do this." So, you and I were just talking about who is going to be the next candidate. It's indicated right here that President Biden has endorsed Kamala Harris to succeed him, coming on the heels of his letter. What do you make of this latest news?
It looks like a hostage video. What are you doing two statements? I mean, if you can't get your act together of making a statement that lays out clearly what you're trying to say, what a disaster. I'm sitting here one block away from the White House, and I'm wondering who's running the country if you can't even get your statements together. I'm in PR. We have a PR agency, and having your statement set and consistent before you go out to the media is the easiest thing to do if done right. This is terrible having two separate statements. It doesn't show confidence in her. It looks like a hostage video that after further review, we're going to go with a whole different message and a different plan. That is a disaster for her. It's a disaster for him. It doesn't show confidence in her at all. And again, the message is, or the big question is, why is he competent to stay in office? And why isn't he handing the presidency to her? Unless he doesn't have confidence in her. If that's the case, then she shouldn't be vice president either. These are really big questions that are going to be answered or have to be answered in the coming week.
Keith, before we let you go, any final thoughts as we all continue to process new news after new development?
I mean, politics is incredible. Looking back a week ago, there was an assassination attempt, and now a president not running on a ticket. Hang on to your hats going forward. We don't know where we're going because this is uncharted territory. And I think it's going to be really up to the American public to follow along and ask hard questions of why is some of this stuff happening? An open convention can also open up a lot of funny business, a lot of things of foreign influence and pay to play and a lot of inconsistency across the board. They've been talking about for the last 3 months that Ohio was the barrier for why they couldn't do the nomination at the convention. And here they are. They're going to have to do the nomination of the convention because they're not going to have a vice president to be able to have a ticket vote between August 1st and August 7th, which they were trying to do earlier. So complete chaos. Hang on to your hats, and who knows what tomorrow brings. We didn't even know what one statement of the presidency, it lasted 5 minutes while we were talking, another statement from the presidency. So just a mess over there at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue.
All right, Keith, as always, thank you for joining us here as we continue to follow this breaking news. We appreciate it.